Hello and welcome to The Roll Well. I'm Bridget and this is Loren, and we are so thrilled to have you with us. Today we want to talk about the unexpected and how you can prepare yourself for that in advance, because eventually these things may happen. Whether you are joining us while you're just finishing a chat with the neighbor, maybe you're putting together a grocery list. Are you already replanting soybeans? We had the well-being of rural areas like yours in mind when we built this episode. We know the ag industry has its challenges, but we are right alongside you and cannot wait to connect and inspire one generation to the next. Loren, I've introduced you briefly to my friend Theresia, and I think our conversation today will be a great one.
Hey, Bridget. Hey, listeners. You know what? I'm super excited to listen today to our guest. Her name is Theresia. And I've just had the privilege literally of meeting Theresia. But folks, when we share stories, when we share about our experiences, we learn from one another. And I think one of the greatest things, particularly that women can do, is tell their story. And one of the greatest things for men to do is also to tell their story as well. There's power in storytelling. It's the way we connect. So I'm looking forward to connecting more in Thesia's story today. Theresia, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. This is kind of fun. I've done some things with Bridget in the past. So, and we're connecting on a few other things moving forward. So I'm just excited to have a conversation this morning.
So Theresia Gillie, you're in northwestern Minnesota, but that's just the bare details. Tell us more.
Well, I am a farmer. I'm a wheat and soybean farmer up in northwestern Minnesota, up east of Hallock, Minnesota, very, very northwestern corner. I always tell everybody I live 20 miles from Canada and 20 miles from North Dakota. And so if you get to the end of the planet, turn around and come back 20 miles. So that's where I live. And I actually grew up in central Minnesota in a small town called Melrose. Went to college, graduated in accounting. Never expect to farm, fell in love with a farmer and moved up here. I am a past president of the Minnesota Soybean Growers Association. I had the privilege of being on their state board for many, many years. And I am currently a county commissioner.
I love how active you are in everything that you do.
Can I ask, what is a county commissioner? We don't have that term where I'm at.
So I'm on our county board. So Minnesota has 28 counties. Oh, okay. And each county has a county board. And I was elected to District Number 2 back in the end of 2016. So I'm in my 9th year of being a county commissioner too.
Oh, wow.
Also along with farming my 950 acres. So.
Wow. Okay.
We won't talk about, living in a small town. You get to be involved in a lot of things.
Yeah. Wow, Theresia, that resume is thick. I hear a lot of passion in there. Tell us about your experience in farming. And you said you married a farmer. Tell us more about how you came to farming.
Well, I met my husband, Keith, actually my boyfriend at the time, in college. And we ended up, his dad had a custom harvesting business. And I thought after I graduated from college that I was going to go along, make sure the books got taken care of and things like that and follow along. I no more than got to Laverne, Oklahoma. The most wonderful place under the planet is Laverne, Oklahoma. It's in the Panhandle. And they said, well, we're going to put you in a 7720 for a few days. That was back in 1983.
Whoa.
Yep. So Theresia's suddenly the combine driver.
So I remember going, you're kidding, right? Because I had never done big equipment before. And I started running a 7720 with a 24-foot header back in 1983. And it was before Keith and I got married. And we just started, so I started going south combining in the spring and in the fall. And we had, and of course I harvested here. It didn't take me too long, and I started running tractors and things like that, along with doing the book work. And that was my job. Yes. And then in 1986, Keith and I started with some acres of our own. And I've been just farming and doing a ton of other odd jobs and being part of the community ever since.
Okay, so at some point we need to do a podcast about all the stories of the people who worked on our family's farms when they didn't think that they were, do you know, like when we had friends over, it was like, what job is your dad going to put us up to now, right? Like, and I'm thinking, I remember one of the first times I was driving the tractor and I kept popping the clutch. Well, there was a wagon behind me with bales of hay stacked to the sky, in this, what I felt, and my brothers were on top, and there I am popping the clutch, and they're nearly flying off the back of the wagon because it wasn't a very stable drive. So although, you know, I've never driven a combine. I mean, tractors, yes, and lots of other equipment, but not a combine. So goodness gracious, that would have been quite the undertaking.
I remember because on the 7720s, there was a yellow handle that you had the separator on the right side, and then if there got to be chaff and stuff in there, you'd stand all day with, or sit all day with your foot on that separator thing until the next morning.
Just ride it a little longer.
I'm just going to drive it till tomorrow morning because there's some chaff stuck in there and we're not stopping right now. So
somebody else can fix that problem in the morning.
Anybody that's a little older will understand that story.
Yes. And so Theresia, you know, you got more and more involved in the farm. But unfortunately, things took quite the turn where you literally became the farmer.
Well, Keith and I farmed with then we turned around and farmed with his dad for a number of years, 13 years, and we ended up splitting the farm. It was mostly financial, and kind of went through a messy farm split. Then Keith and I started farming our own portion of our farm and keeping up with the debts. And I was so fortunate that we were so far in debt that we had an attorney tell us to file bankruptcy.
Oh, wow.
And I remember going in and I said, how do I do that and still live in our community? You know, because you know who's getting hit out of bankruptcy, right? It's your neighbors.
All the locals.
The local hardware store. It's the local fertilizer plant. It's the elevator. It's, you know, it was the fuel supplier. You know, it was just like, I remember sitting there, I said, I can't do that and still live in our community. He called me a fool. And I stood up and I said, you watch me. And I turned around and I walked out. And I went home. I called every creditor we had. My father-in-law did not pay all of his debts, but we were in a 4-person partnership. And a 4-person partnership did not leave us not immune to those debts that were still outstanding, whether he was allocated them or not. And we chose to pay all of them. And I worked with creditors I always said that we were in business with my father-in-law for 13 years. I figured it would take me 13 years to get out of debt. It took me 8. I worked on it for 8 years. And I will tell you, everybody I worked with wanted to help us succeed. But I was very open, very honest. If I couldn't make my payment, I called them. They never had to call me. We got rid of our credit cards for a while. But on the other hand, it did help get, I would say, us a lot of respect that this was the path we chose other than you know, our other choice. And then our farm kind of started taking off. We were able to rebuy some land back, and then it was going pretty good. You know, we went up till 2012 and it was doing really well. You know, 13 and 14 were a little bit on the flat side, you know. Then we got into 15 and 16, and here up in the northwest, in the northern Red River Valley, we had some excessive rain issues, really bad. And we refinanced, and then we refinanced again in 16. And then, of course, we got into 2017. And I knew at the end of 2016 that our finances weren't good. Our cash flow was not good. I always say that we were too rich to be broke. Okay.
Right.
So I called our banker. I remember combining. I was in the combine calling my banker and saying, this is not good. We do not have enough crop. We do not have enough price. We're not going to cash flow this. I don't know how we're going to make the payments. And so I started working on it in November. in November, I was connected with my bankers and stuff. And then I just remember they were kind of like, well, we've been all in with you for the last 2 years, trying to recapture. And Keith and I had reinvested and recaptured equity to the tune of $500,000 over those 2 years. And we started having a bigger conversation of when do we stop the bleeding? Because, this was a big, when we lost $500,000 in 2 years, that's a big loss. And granted, we're trying to recapture it. There's no guarantees, in farming. It could be the same in 2017. And then we lost a bunch of land that we were renting, lost about half of our farm to one. We had an investor that we rented a bunch of land from, about half of our farm. And we lost that because we didn't have, I remember calling them and telling them, I can't pay what you want and make a profit. Can you give me a break for a couple of years? And we'd been renting this land since 93. I mean, seriously, a long time.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we already have somebody else, and they didn't really care.
Oh.
And that was a hard day. And so then Keith and I went in. We talked again with bankers. We talked with different finance people. And it kind of just got to be, we were in our 50s, and it's like, do we keep rolling the dice, or do we just stop? Let's just stop. And so we saw an auctioneer who was excellent, and he said, you got really good mid-aged equipment. It's been very well taken care of. We'll have an auction, and we're going to do this the best we can to hold on to as much land as possible. Through financing, I had my house already removed, so we weren't ever going to lose our home. So that part I had worked on, because I thought, well, push comes to shove, we won't lose our home. Okay. And we started working on that. And that Saturday, Keith killed himself. And I will tell you, nothing like having a day that your whole life gets turned upside down, and so unexpected. No letters, no nothing. Everybody always says, in the suicide scenario, so what did they leave for a letter? And I will tell you, I've yet to talk to somebody that got a letter.
Yes.
It's not common. It's not common. And in fact, oftentimes when we talk about suicide, a lot of people say, like professionals will say there's no such thing as a spontaneous suicide. Like in agriculture, we do see that because we're often functioning in this level of coerced resilience, we call it, or like we just keep moving, we keep moving, and we don't see you don't see anything else. And then it's a really quick flip for farmers where they're just like, I just give up. So it's not something that we see coming down the pipeline.
And so then my life was turned upside down. I ended up in the emergency room twice because pretty much I was losing it. And I will, because it's such a, like, this is not happening to me. Yeah. And of course, there's a series of time that I don't remember. I saw a counselor for a long time. He was a crisis counselor, and he said, nope, your brain is just protecting you. I actually found my husband. So, and then I remember going to the emergency room, and the doctor was just like, we're going to give you some stuff so you can just cope for right now. And because I seriously could not concentrate. It's like all the neons in my brain were like disconnected, and I could not put a sentence structure together. I remember people bringing me food. There was so much food. It's a real community. It's a real community. So you got all this food and all these supplies. We set up a couple tables in the basement, and and people would bring me. It's like, Theresia, you got to eat something. And I said, I can't eat it. I can't swallow it. And even water, it's like, I can't swallow that. I went, I don't know how long without, I don't even remember. There's just some things there I don't remember. And then a couple weeks after, my two neighbors, which Keith and I hung around with, we always hung around with our neighbors. We have this little neighbor thing that we'd get together on Wednesdays and have a cocktail, and a lot of times on a Friday night. And my two neighbors came over, Richard and Steve, and they said, well, we're going to help you farm. And I told them they were nuts, there was another swear word in there, but I'm not going to say it. But I said, "You're nuts." And they said, "No, we have all these people that want to help." And so I'm still to this day, it's kind of one of these things. I don't know why, but it is the reason why I am still farming. So the neighbors came in. I had this, they would call and say, "Well, so-and-so delivered fuel, and so-and-so's planting this field, and so-and-so's working on this field, and so-and-so." And it was just like, why are they doing this? I just didn't really understand it. And and then the elevator came, took all the grain. They came and checked the bins. They took all the grain. They said, "Nope, we're just going to have it all hauled in, so you don't have to worry about it," because that was Keith's job. I remember being mad about that. It's like, he left without doing his job. That was his job, was to take care of the grain, and because I'm doing finances, that grain handling was his part of our partnership. And so the elevator hauled it in, and then that fall, of course, now I got all my fields planted. And so the elevators were like, "Just haul it in. Just haul it in. We're just going to let you store it until you want to sell it," and stuff like that. I mean, they even came with trucks. And the elevator did that fall. They came with trucks and stuff. And we had different people there too that wanted to help. I actually combined that whole fall. I combined my fields that fall. And then that fall we had, go ahead.
As you think back, Theresia, the first question I think a lot of listeners are going to ask is, did you see any signs? Did Keith give any indication what he was thinking or what he was feeling?
I would say, hindsight's 2020. I'd say the biggest sign was that he wasn't sleeping. That's the one that I would say really stuck out, because I'd wake up in the night and he wasn't in bed. He'd be sitting in the living room on an iPad or something. It's like, well, come to bed. You can't do this and not sleep. And of course, at this time, I'm president of Minnesota Soybean, and I'm traveling a lot. So, but I remember coming home going, did he do anything when I was gone? It was just but of course, I'm trying to be, the second woman president of Minnesota Soybean, and I'm running practically it's a big job to be the president of a state organization. For sure. And of course, then we started having these really hard conversations because it just wasn't working. And that's just, go ahead. As you think about what's happened, you were very involved doing the book work. There's a lot of farm wives who are not. And I don't want to just say farm wives. I want to say farm partners who are not. You have a wealth of knowledge because, unfortunately, you had to learn baptism by fire. What are some of those things that you want other women and other partners to be thinking about, that why you have to have that vested interest in the farm? Well, first of all, you have to know what you're worth. And you need to know where your fields are. I mean, I've even talked to women that I don't think they know where their fields are. Know your finances. Know what you're invested in. Know what your percentage of the farm is. It was easy for Keith and I because we were partners. So I was 50%, he was 50%. So that was an easy math, for lack of a better word. But then you have a lot of farmers are farming with their brothers or their dads or an uncle or cousins. Do you really? And there's LLCs and there's incorporations and there's other partnerships, and you understand that just joint ventures. There's all sorts of different business structures. Do you know? Do you really know? Except for the farm pays for my vehicle and I don't have to buy gas, and pays the insurance, that kind of thing. You need to really understand what you're signing, because on a lot of these, you have to go in and you have to sign the papers. I remember in 1986, because Keith and I got involved back at the ASCS days. You remember those days? And I will tell you, the local staff was excellent. And I would go in and I started asking questions. It's like, well, what does this mean? Why am I signing this? And people go, how did you learn so much of it? I read the form. I started by reading the form. And then I went in and asked questions. And I will tell you, they were so darn helpful because they wanted me to understand. They really did. And of course, we have crop insurance. How much are you protecting? What's out there. I'm not a cattle person, so I want to apologize to our ranchers out there. But, there is such a dynamic of finance. And I had the privilege of knowing our finances inside and out. I've been doing our balance sheet forever. 40 years. Oh my goodness. So, I'm old. So, but you understand that, I also got to see how we progressed. And I also always knew where our investments were, how much our equipment was worth, how much we still owed on it. Are we upside down? Are we not upside down? Because you understand that with farming, it goes up and then it goes down. Sometimes used equipment's worth a lot. Sometimes it's, you can't barely give it away. And, and so I really, and it's okay. Your spouse or your partner should want you to know. They should want you to know and want you to protect yourself and your family. And I'll tell you that there were some things that happened to me after that are disturbing when you've been a part of a family so long. But when it comes to farming, then that kind of gets to be the vulture-ness of it. And not that you don't love your in-laws, not that you don't love your brothers or your husband's brothers, families, and stuff like that. But then it comes in, and there is a whole different dynamic that happens after that, where they don't really believe that now you shouldn't really even be part of the farm. Well, your spouse, your partner, or whatever, has been very vested in this. So have you. A lot of women have moved someplace just like I did, and changed their life. I did not have a job in town. I actually worked on the farm. I worked in the field. I did the whole 9 yards. And so you're also very vested in this, and your work ethic matters too. And before you protect the rest of your spouse's family or your partner's family, you need to protect your family first. And that's what I did. I knew that I had to protect me first.
As you went through that, how do you do that? How do you protect your own, and I don't mean financial, but your own mental well-being? Because you were taking blow after blow. And like you said, there were times your brain just had to protect you. When you think about it, how do you do that? How do you protect yourself in those situations?
Well, first of all, I had to be on some medication for a while. I went to a counselor. I still go. Actually, I actually just called the other day because I think I need to go back and counsel for a little bit longer because I have some bigger issues that I'm dealing with. And and it's okay. You know what the best part is I remember going to a mental health forum that we had in town, and they were talking about all the different, signs of suicide. Okay. And I remember sitting there in that room, and I said, I have all them. And I turned around and looked at my practitioner because it was at the hospital. And I said, Karen, I have all them. And she said, yeah. I said, the difference is I realize I have all them. And so I know that when I am getting backwards, when my mind is going back and getting dark, that I need to do something about it. I'm aware. I think that's probably a little better for women than it maybe is for men sometimes. But I don't find that a weakness. I find that a strength. And
oftentimes we talk about, rather than them being signs of suicide, we talk about them as risk factors, right? Because we can set ourselves up where we're thinking like, oh, somebody missed the signs, and if you had just caught those signs, like as if it's a big red glaring stop sign that's flashing at you, it's not. But we have risk factors, and just because we have risk factors doesn't mean somebody's going to run towards that direction or fall into that direction. But being aware of those risk factors means we can compensate for them, which is exactly what you're doing. You're saying, I've got these risk factors. I need to go back and talk to a professional and come up with some more strategies or process some trauma. Because clearly, Theresia, your story has not just one experience of trauma. There's multi experiences of trauma. Simply the piece, not simply, but the piece about, after Keith's death, the working with your family members, that would be traumatic. And, the story is not linear. When we talk about grief is not linear. We don't just like, okay, we're at the 3-month mark. Okay, we're at the 6-month mark. Okay, we're at the 6-year mark. That is just not the case. When it comes to grief, I often explain to people that, you're kind of in your boat on your own. You could have a whole bunch of people around you in other boats around you supporting you. But you're looking towards the horizon. You're figuring out, I got to get me over there somehow. And there's no straight line to get there. So I appreciate you sharing, and your level of vulnerability is so authentic. And we need this more in agriculture. In our communities, we need this opportunity to say, I do have these risk factors. I do have these struggles, and I need help, or I want to be of help to somebody else, because sometimes when we come alongside people, we heal together. And that's of course what we hope to be doing even within this podcast. So,
well, and of course, when you start understanding, because I know where my weaknesses are, okay, and be honest with you, it's okay to ask for help. And I'll tell you, I struggled with that for probably the first 2 years after Keith died. And it was just like, well, I can't ask anybody for help. And I was fortunate to have my partner is Richard now. And Richard's wife died 6 months before my husband did. And she was my girlfriend. And so she ended up, he just had some other knowledge that I didn't. Of course, I'm trying to handle Keith's estate. And of course, now I have this partnership of him and I that now can no longer exist, because you can't be a one-person partnership. And, so there's all these other little factor things that keep showing up, and they give me anxiety and, and I just remember.
Sorry, I was just going to say, the legal ramifications alone in changing from a partnership to a sole proprietor, or from, an incorporation and like shares and all of those pieces, like those are very complicated under the best of circumstances, let alone, my husband recently died, and I am thrust into a grieving process that as farmers, we end up suspending. It's one of the reasons we experience prolonged grief, is because when grief hits, so does chaos within our business. And so we're fighting for the legacy for our own children or for our spouse. And so it does, and complicates it.
And I have to say, Theresia, what you said there is so important. It was hard to ask for help. And now you recognize when you need it, and you're willing, because things come back, like you said. You've decided you're going to recognize that, embrace it, and go fix it.
And okay, I'm also a woman in agriculture, and there's some things I physically cannot do. Okay, I'm just going to be straight out honest with it, and I cannot lift that chisel plow shake, whether my life depends it or not. And so I have to get help. I'm not afraid to call John Deere and them and say, I want an oil change done. I ain't doing it. So I'm just not going to do that stuff anymore. And so I'm so fortunate that I have Richard and Steve. I also have Mitch, which is Steve's son-in-law. He's wonderful. He's a welder. He fixes all my mishaps. And but to really understand when I am in a weak place and ask for help, because that was really hard. I think that was one of those, because I'm an independent woman and I'm going to handle this. And then, of course, with suicide comes this incredible grief. It's a really hard grief, and it's a huge guilt that goes with it, because if I've heard it once, I've heard it. What signs did you see? Blah blah blah. And I always say, it's always 2020. In the after, it's always 2020.
That's right.
But I remember finding him on that gravel road, and then it was just like my whole brain just went, like it totally disconnected. And you're kind of living in this alternate reality. And it wasn't until, I would say, probably 4, 5, 6 months after, my girlfriend sent me a video of her grandson, who was 3 at the time. And he had a wrench in his hand and he was working on a trailer. And she goes, what are you doing? He goes, I'm working. I'm a farmer. He said like that. And it clicked on me right then. Okay, I did not grow up on a farm, and I've been very open. I grew up in a small town in central Minnesota. My husband grew up on this farm and sat on his grandpa's lap and, did all those things. My husband was a farmer when he was 3 years old. And that's an identity. And I never added the identity crisis part of it.
Yes.
And so and I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't connect those two things together until I saw that video. And I said, I never thought in the midst of, because I'm trying to stop the bleeding. We've got this farm operation. We've rebuilt it back up, and we now have equity. We're too rich to be broke. The whole scenario. We're not too poor. We're young enough. We can still get other jobs. I'm county commissioner at the moment, and stuff. And so all this is going in this direction because I'm trying to protect our finances. I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd have to protect his identity. And that part really threw me at that moment. It's like, I didn't get that part of it because I didn't grow up. And I actually, because I'm getting older now, and I'm not going to farm forever, because not that I don't love my land and things like that, because I do have a passion for it. But I'm getting to have more physical limitations.
Sure.
And I'm okay to stop. Because I don't have that. Okay, I didn't grow up at 3 years old saying, I think I want to go to college and be an accountant. Just saying. You don't wake up when you're not a little kid. They didn't give me a calculator when I was 3 years old so I could be an accountant. You
didn't have a legacy of all the generations before, right? And that expectation. Yeah.
And this legacy thing is horrible because this isn't your grandpa's farm. Bridget and I did a event in North Dakota in January. And when you talk about grandpa's farm and the dynamics grandpa got to deal with compared to what you're dealing with today are incredibly different. I remember telling, and I'm going to tell the story, Bridget's heard it probably 5 times already, but I remember having a conversation with Keith's grandfather because I actually live on the original homestead. And Grandpa was getting sicker, and I told Grandpa, I said, how did you pay for the original farm pieces? Because I actually live on the original farmstead. And he goes, well, he said, I had to pay my brothers and sisters. And I said, so you never had a bad farm year? And he said, sure I did. And I said, well, then how did you pay your brothers and sisters? He goes, they didn't get paid that year. And it says like, oh, okay.
This is the way it was.
So that was the way it was. Well, now, you have a son that's buying grandpa's land or dad's land or whatever, and he's supposed to make these payments to his siblings because dad passed away. And they're going, well, we had a really bad farm year. We're not going to make your payment this year. And they're going to go, we're taking you to court because we think we can get more money.
There are so many things that happen. I don't think folks always realize that when it comes to farm families and all the dynamics that go along with them. And Theresia, your story is dynamic. And I cannot say thank you enough for taking the time to share all those different aspects. This is a lot to think about. And I think you will have a tremendous amount of listeners who have questions and feedback, and do not be surprised that they contact you at all. And Loren, we always have a quote, and this one definitely fits with our discussion today.
It does. It's interesting because I think it's a little bit, funny, not to add humor to very painful circumstances, but there are many times as farmers that we have to use our ingenuity. And Theresia tells that story. Theresia, there were so many times where she had to get creative and go outside her comfort zone and create something out of pain, create something out of what everybody else said would be done. And so the quote, it's an unknown, although I think any of us could have offered it. Baling twine turns every farmer into MacGyver. And so I'm challenging you both to come up with your Baler Twine story. I have used Baler Twine to hook on to help a ewe labor a lamb to pull it out. I have, of course, used it to tie fence gates numerous times. And then, of course, every time we have to move a fence gate, you have to have your knife on you to cut them through because our knots are quite. It hangs heat lamps. Yes, that's a fire hazard. Mm-hmm. It hangs all sorts of feed troughs and all sorts of things like that. Anybody else have a story about Baler Twine and how you've used it?
When I was a kid, my dad always said that anything works for a hammer in case of emergency. But twine can sometimes be that, right? It's what binds you together in that emergency. And I want you to think about how many times Theresia mentioned her community and the twine that holds them together. It went from her neighbors who came over and said, you can still farm and we'll be there with you, to those who brought supplies and meals, to local doctors who said, yes, this is you and this is your new normal. And yes, we're here to help. That in and of itself is a piece of twine that connects everybody in that region for Theresia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm going to go off of Bridget here a little bit, because in all the times that I struggled and I had to pull that piece of twine and it stayed together and it was strong and it gave me an opportunity to find a new path, to pull myself up when I was down, because my legs have been kicked out from under me on more than a few occasions, and it helped me rebuild something that I never thought that I was capable of. But I'll tell you that it really has. I will say a bale of twine or odd pieces of twine have great resilience, and I guess I will call that my twine story.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah, I love it because you're right. There's times where we depend on that twine, on that string, and it has proven to stand the test of time, and it has proven to stand the test of hard things. So thank you so much, Theresia, for sharing.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Well, one more thing for all three of us, and that is, I have a little quote, and I hope it makes you think deeply, but smirk quite a bit. All right. Whether it's for your birthday or whatever special occasion you might choose, someone offered to make you the ultimate dessert of your choice. What concoction would you request? And because Loren is a baker, I feel like this is just a slam dunk for her, although she's going to have to choose. She can pick from so many.
I think that would be the difficulty. Yeah. I'm kind of decadent. Like, I like really good high quality chocolate. Give a little shout out to our local chocolatier. Although, Bridget, you sent me some chocolates from a local chocolatier there in your area. And so the chocolate guild, the guild in Petrolia, Ontario, produces these chocolates. But so if I could take her chocolate and weave it into a cheesecake that has all of the goodness of like peanut butter and hot fudge and some caramel sauce, yeah, that would definitely be mine.
Theresia, what comes to mind?
What comes to mind for me, I'm going with the ice cream, the fudge, some peanuts or something. I always think about a peanut butter parfait.
Oh, yeah.
I know I can't have it every day, but once in a while I just really need a hot fudge sundae.
I love it. I love that.
And there's nothing better than a little bit of ice cream. I'll tell you, it makes everybody's day.
It does. And to that extent, I could take your ice cream and put it on my piece of rhubarb pie because I love rhubarb. That's my favorite. Most of us we're suckers for chocolate, right? And there is a local bakery in Fargo that makes a chocolate fudge cake with a chocolate ganache and hazelnuts, and it's delightful. And I would eat my weight's worth of that every chance I got, but I shouldn't. So I try not to. But it's all worth it. So as we wrap up today, folks, we just really want to thank you for being here. Theresia, are you using any social media platforms you want folks to be aware of where they could find you?
I'm on Facebook, and I should really start some more, but my schedule doesn't really allow for it. So, and I'm on like LinkedIn and, what's the other one that I'm on? So sorry.
I see you on X sometimes.
I'm on X sometimes. Yes, I'm on Twitter. X Twitter. Yes, I am. I do some posting and I do normally do like hashtag woman in agriculture, that kind of stuff, so that people understand that I'm still out here, still standing. So
amazing. Wow, Bridget, you take us out here so well. But before you do that, I just want to say one more time, thank you, Theresia, for sharing your story. It has been a pleasure to sit at your feet today and just kind of absorb some of your wisdom nuggets for us. So I really appreciate this time.
I've had the privilege of visiting with a lot of women that don't understand their farming operation. And so many of them go, how did you learn everything that you know? And I always tell them, I learned one day at a time, one step at a time. So don't think that you have to know all of it tomorrow. Start with one step. And you'd be surprised, pretty soon a whole year goes by and you just know a little bit more. And
that is the perfect way to end our discussion today, ladies. And thank you so much to everyone who joined us.
Thank you for including me.
Thanks so much. See you next week.
Bye-bye.